If you've had it, you know it. You can describe it as a number of things. A challenge with word recall, fuzzy or foggy thinking, an inability to remember certain details, to remember where you're going, perhaps feeling a little bit incoordinated, or just otherwise sort of fatigued. Now, thankfully, there is more study being done on this entity so that when someone goes to a doctor's office and says, I have brain fog, the doctor can say, oh, okay, this is actually a thing that is understood, studied, and we can do XYZ about it. But in short, you feel mentally like you're not at your sharpest. And it can be a little bit different from person to person, but there's this general haze, this general impairment of your cognition. So then this begs the question, what causes brain fog? And this is where the 4 components come in. And they are lifestyle, nutritional, hormonal, and gut health. So let's outline each one of these so you can identify if this might be you. Regarding lifestyle, any conversation on brain health would not be complete unless we discussed either insufficient or poor sleep. Part of the reason why sleep is so important is twofold. One, you have to clear metabolic byproducts out of the brain so they don't build up and become toxic. And also, sleep helps with inflammation and a reduction of oxidative stress. So it's probably not surprising that a 2023 observational study, pretty large, almost 30,000 people, found that sleeping less than 6 hours or more than 9 hours was associated with a decrease in brain volume and a decrease in cognitive function, so memory, reaction time, reasoning, and logic. By the way, please comment and subscribe. We will be doing a follow-up video detailing the treatments for brain fog, so make sure to subscribe in order to catch that. Outside of sleep, there's also stress. One of the things that we're understanding is quite important regarding stress or the appropriate amount of stress is how stress impacts this region of the brain known as the limbic system. And when this part of your brain is overactive, it directly correlates with a decrease in cognitive function. In fact, we have some pretty elegant studies that have shown in people who are under a lot of stress, they actually have an overactivation through functional MRI scans of the brain. And you see this region, the limbic region, whether it be the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, or the amygdala, these regions of the brain are overactive, and this directly correlates with poor cognitive function, which is likely why a 2023 review paper quoted, stressful life factors can act as a contributor to brain fog. For example, financial, familial, or work stressors can cause rumination and depressive symptoms that affect cognitive function. Now, there's also good news here. Firstly, if there are things you can do to mitigate a stressor, obviously do so. However, some of these things will be outside of your control. So then it begs the question, well, what can you do to dampen the effects of these stressors that you may not be able to change? And this, again, is where time in nature is such a powerful intervention. To quote a 2021 review paper, we found evidence for an association between nature exposure and improved cognitive function, brain activity, blood pressure, mental health, physical activity, and sleep. Exposure to nature or outdoor environments may reduce the negative effects of stress. In fact, the research here regarding time in nature is so compelling that I'm starting to feel it might even be better than meditation, especially for those of you who have a stressor or multiple stressors and you're trying to find a way to buffer. One of the things I've heard in our consulting practice is I try to meditate, but I keep thinking about my boss, this, relationship stressor, whatever it is. So, okay, point taken, right? For some people, meditation can help. Certainly go for it. However, if you find, like this last study commented, that you ruminate, you can't get your mind off of those things, well, this is where walking and doing so in nature can be very powerful. We do know that walking is a way that the body and the brain specifically processes information and stressors. And along with that, doing so in nature, whether it be a park, woods, a beach, a lake, can all help reduce that activation of the limbic system and correlate with better cognitive function and also well-being, like scores of energy, depression, and anxiety. So an easy one that you can do is take some time in nature if you feel like you're stressed. Another important component here is inactivity. It's been documented that when you're sedentary, your brain actually shrinks over time. And this is in part because you have less circulation to the brain, and you also have less production of certain hormones like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is AKA'd as Miracle-Gro for the brain. And this is likely why evidence has shown that in people who are sedentary, who then start exercising, you actually see an improvement in brain volume over time. In fact, that's what this slide is depicting. You're seeing two groups of people who had the volume of their hippocampus, part of the limbic system, monitored over time. Those who maintained a sedentary lifestyle saw shrinkage of the hippocampus. Those who started exercising saw an improvement, a growth of this area of the brain. And this correlated with improved memory. And I just want to make sure to slip in this quote. Our results demonstrate that the size of the hippocampus is modifiable in late adulthood, and that moderate intensity aerobic exercise is effective at reversing volume loss. And by the way, the same thing, preservation of volume of the brain, has been demonstrated for any type of exercise. This one study happened to recommend aerobic, but again, it's been demonstrated for multiple types of exercise. So don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good and start any sort of activity. This will help preserve your brain volume. You want to have a brain that doesn't atrophy, obviously. You want to have a robust brain, but you also don't want to have overactivation of the limbic system. So mitigating stress will prevent overactivation, and then exercise will help you maintain healthy volume of your brain. If you're not active and you have brain fog, get moving. And if you have a lot of stress, then get moving in nature.